welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the publisher, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing pretty well, Josh, because after a, 7 weeks of just mediocrity and outright bad performance, the San Francisco 49ers on national television for Monday Night Football embarrass the Los Angeles Rams, who've been, they're like tweeting about going all in. They signed Odell Beckham. They got the whole thing. And we just go and we smash them. And it warms the heart. And it makes you believe that there's still a glimmer of hope that this team can be good. It's like when your favorite disc golfer has just been playing like trash and you're like, why are you playing so bad? We know you're better than this. And then they come out and they win the tournament and you're like, yes, this is what we've been waiting for. This is how I feel today, Josh.
It's kind of wild because, so first off, this weekend was crazy for football. Bucks lost. The Patriots embarrassed the Browns. The Cardinals lost. It was a weird weekend, which seems to have been the theme for the past couple of weeks. But there was a legitimate chance both the wild cards could come out of the NFC West if the Niners start playing a little better. Because right now it feels like the Cardinals and Rams are both a lock, and Seattle then is like, it's Seattle and the Niners left in that division. But I mean, I look around the rest of the NFC and there's a couple teams that could push for that wild card, but the Niners aren't out of it.
Not out of it.
The NFC West could really represent.
Anyway, how was your weekend, Josh?
It wasn't too bad. I got to play some disc golf, which is the first time in a couple of weeks. I usually am pretty good about it, but I mean, with the election and then trying to get everything done afterwards, really didn't get to play a lot for a couple of weeks. And so we got to go out and play a great course around here. And then we came back to our just little 9-hole course, and I took my 9-year-old cousin and we've been playing with him. So it was a good weekend.
That's great. Any
Any weekend with disc golf is a good
Fantastic. Well, we have a suddenly big show. Over the weekend, I was like, well, I don't really know what we're going to be talking about this week. And then a bunch of news comes out on Monday. We're going to be talking about Gavin Rathbun, who left Discmania, signed with Dynamic Discs. And the PDGA came out and announced that the Champions Cup is dropping its stroke play / match play format. Oh. They're dumping it. They're going full stroke play. They caved. I don't know why it took this long. We're going to talk to Nate Heinold, who's now the board president. He's also the head of the majors committee, about why they made this decision. And so we're not going to get to see that format. We're just going to get 4 rounds of stroke play at the Champions Cup, which is the new 4th major happening next April for the first time. Nate will be joining us in just a moment. We got a lot to talk about, and we're going to dig into some off-season stuff as well. Still, those little burbling rumors about some potentially bigger changes. We'll get to those, and in our subscriber bonus segment that comes out tomorrow, we're going to be talking about what the kind of current state of various manufacturers' teams are, and where we might see some changes, who needs to step up, and should be a lot of fun. So stay with us. Nate Heinold coming up next with us right here on The Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Pound guarantees all of their packs against defects in materials and workmanship for the lifetime of every pack. That's right, lifetime warranty. That's the kind of commitment they have to making a great disc golf bag. Go to pounddiscgolf.com to learn more about their great options. Welcome back to The Upshot. Joining us now is Nate Heinold, who's the president of the board of the PDGA, among many other things. Nate, welcome back to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning. Great to have you here. So the PDGA announces yesterday that the Champions Cup is moving from a hybrid format with stroke and match play to pure stroke play, based on, according to the article that the PDGA put out, feedback from stakeholders, including players and sponsors. So, this announcement initially about the format came out many months ago. Why change it to stroke play at this juncture?
Yeah, so in the article we referenced, that obviously the original event was, as you said, stroke play and match play, but after we received additional feedback from players and stakeholders, so I like that word additional because we of course got feedback when we first set up this event, but the original feedback from some of the players was, we love this format. And that was great. Paul Ulibarri, loved the format. People like Kevin Jones said they loved the format. Later on when drilling down, Paul was like, yeah, I love the format because it makes it easier for me to win. And I was like, wow, that's interesting feedback. So, and then of course you had players like Eagle, and Paige and Macbeth, came out and said they hated the format, but there were plenty. Sarah Hokum said she loved the format. But as we got a tournament team in place, sponsors came on board, many months down the road, we've heard more feedback. We've engaged the Pro Tour Players Committee again. And even though they didn't really take an up, down, or vote, the feedback was mixed at best. And maybe even 50-50 on the committee, but it was more of no one's going to complain if we have a stroke play event is the bottom line for a major, right? No one's going to say, wow, you should have done 4 rounds of stroke play and then 2 rounds of match play, right? No one's going to really bat an eye at it. It wouldn't have caused any issue or news at all. And so we wanted to make sure that for the first event, we put our best foot forward.
So we've talked on this show a little bit about elite tournaments that aren't majors that feel like majors. So, for example, the Throw Pink Women's Championship this past year, it felt like a major, and everything except designation. For the Champions Cup, what do you think makes a major? Because now, if you look at the other majors, USDGC has Winthrop, Worlds is, our World Championship, it changes each year. European Open is held in the other continent. So what is it that makes the Championship Cup special? And what makes a major, I guess, is the question I'm asking.
I can answer those one at a time, but what's going to make this event special is going to take time. It's not going to be a snap of the finger, and if Macbeth or somebody makes the winning putt, they're double fist bumping and screaming at the top of their lungs and tossing putters into the crowd with their offhand, right? So, yeah, obviously as an event host, you'd love to have that reaction for any event, but it will take time to get there. I think it's going to take an elite payout. It's going to take an elite course that is only focused on the competition. One course that is, I'll choose my words carefully and say it's about the course only, and it's an elite course. And so I think if you have an event on one course with a significant payout, with the backing of the PDGA's resources, and it's in a great time of the year for a major, which is the spring. And we are able to have a unique qualification process where 980 Nate Heinold can't even sign up, and I could have played Worlds this year. And and so that part will be unique. But over time, I think you'll see a brand created. We're going to have a unique trophy that sits at the IDGC, that stays there. And so we're going to try to do something special with the people who actually qualified for the event. So I think it will take time, because certainly, there are many events out there, Ledgestone, Maple Hill, DDO, that you could say, let's slap a major title on that venue, and it probably would feel more prestigious than an inaugural Champions Cup. But, the bottom line is that we want this event to be able to rotate around and to be a one-course event.
So the PDGA stance up to this point, and Robert Leonard, the TD, wrote an article, back in the spring when this news came out, basically made this same case, which is like, let's try this format before we kill it. Like maybe it's going to be great and everyone's going to be super excited about it. And that was kind of the position that we heard, because this, the criticism from Eagle and Page and Paul, that all happened over 6 months ago, right? We heard all that already. So what changed now and made the decision to say, we're going to take what I think you're kind of saying is like the totally safe choice to do straight stroke play, as opposed to giving this a shot? Because I have seen, I think there's just been mixed feelings about this format concept in general, because I've seen some fans in the last 24 hours say, wow, I'm really frustrated that they're not going to try it. And so now we're just going to go with the standard stroke play format.
Yeah, and I would say that we took a very deliberate process. I think this was announced in February or March, and so it's been many, many months. But at that time, we didn't have sponsors. We didn't have the full event team set up. The PDGA has a new marketing director. We have additional staff that have, now come on board. Disc golf has continued to grow. We have more stakeholders. So all of the new feedback we've gotten is, yeah, this is a unique format, but you should do it in an A tier or an Elite Series event. Go do it at Ledgestone or D-Glow, right? Have your event be the guinea pig. And so, when I started to hear the word guinea pig, I thought, we don't want, this inaugural event to feel experimental, right? And so, we want it to mean, we don't want an asterisk by the event. When Paul Ulibarri said, I feel like I had an asterisk if I won, I completely disagreed with that, because if Uli, went through Jackson for 4 rounds of stroke play, was in the top 4, went to the final day and beat 2 of the best players in the world in match play on the same day on a 10,000 foot wooded course, he deserves a major, in my opinion. So yeah, it was my desire to keep the format and leave it alone for the first year. But in the last few weeks, the PDJ staff came to me, Robert came to me, a few of the sponsors called me and said, please change this. So I took it to the majors committee, and they were unanimous. And I didn't even vote on it. As the chair, I sometimes don't vote. In this case, I didn't vote, but it was the staff, Robert, sponsors calling me, and the committee saying, let's make this change.
Is the PDGA leaving the possibility open of returning to that format? Is that something that after a good trial run at Ledgestone, for example, they may come back and revisit?
No, I don't think so. I think that we would, look, if any Elite Series event wanted to have a unique format, I think that would be welcome. I think Jeff has proved with the Pro Tour that match play can work and the Pro Tour Championship format can work. And so, I think an Elite Series event could get their niche and do something different, but I don't think that it would happen at a major at this point in time. I think that we're pretty committed to having consistency in the format.
We definitely need a Stableford scoring tournament on tour. This is something that I hope for.
Hey,
obviously that's not your job, but
I'm gonna go look at this real fast, because when we were in, this is gonna seem outrageous, but I'm pulling up my major summit notes. I'm not gonna find them, but it was definitely on the list. In fact, I'm finding, so we actually talked about that. So,
for this tournament, right?
For this tournament. So, It had some votes. It had some votes of interest. Not like, let's do it. It had some votes of interest, basically.
Yeah. I think it's a similar story where it's like probably not for a major, but a tournament stop that was an Elite Series event that had Stableford scoring would be a lot of fun. Sometime in the middle of summer when we're slogging through a million tournaments in a row, it's nice to have that chance to break it up a little bit. This, I'm hoping, by the way, Nate, we mentioned this to you before we went on the air. I'm hoping to start doing a monthly check-in with you or with somebody from the PDGA. And I wanted to check in about something off the topic of Champions Cup, the PDGA, the last board notes from the September meeting were just posted a week or two ago, and the PDGA has obviously had an incredible boom in membership. I don't know if have you hit the 100,000 mark yet?
We have. In fact, I think we're above 103,000. So
that's amazing. Congratulations. And as a result, the books are in really good shape. As of August 31st, this is straight from the board minutes, the PDGA had total assets of $7.2 million as compared to $4.1 million of the same time in 2020, representing an increase of over $3 million. This is obviously, you have a nest egg and then some at this point. How do you allocate this capital? This is something that I've been talking a little bit about. And, I know you're not the person who's making hiring decisions necessarily, and that's more of a staff thing and what Joe Chargaloff is doing. But, as the president of the board, where do you want to see the PDGA sort of pushing resources now that you have this money and, you don't just want to let it sit in a bank account, especially with inflation where it's at right now. How do you spend this money in a way that benefits the sport?
Well, on the finance side, we've had asset growth, but we've had significant expense growth as well, to be honest. And so when we talk about having money in the bank, we love to have a year of operating expenses in the bank, and that is probably, we probably won't spend that amount, but we're getting to the point where as our revenue and our asset base has grown, our expenses have grown significantly as well. Every time we sanction an event, it has additional expenses with our insurance policy and our ratings program that we're still paying for, and all kinds of things. And so, but the bottom line is we've divested from the Elite Series and we're investing in the Pro Tour and letting them do that. And so I think our focus is going to be on our strategic priorities, which have been listed in several of our meeting minutes, looking at league development, club development, and youth and education is going to be very important. We hired Brian Graham recently, who is a former executive director of the organization and a Disc Golf Hall of Fame member, and he's heading up international and youth and education and other programs like that. So I think you're going to see a focus there. If you read the minutes, Jeff Hungerford has been pushing for a senior tour, and I think it's he's been pushing for a virtual senior tour. So we have a lot of things that we have in the works, but certainly youth and education is incredibly important and will be expensive if we're going to focus on colleges or middle schools or high schools, whatever it is, it will take significant resources.
Speaking just a little bit more on that youth and education, then, do you have a focus, whether you personally, in terms of what you want to achieve, or in the discussion so far on that subject, about which demographic you think is going to be the best target? Is your goal to really expand colleges as your primary focus, or do you think starting earlier, whether that be in middle schools or high schools, is going to be the focus for the PDGA?
I know Brian's working on that right now, so I don't have a personal opinion on that. You could make an argument for starting them young and getting them hooked young, or you could make an argument and say colleges may be easier to get into because there's already some organization there and there's already some sanctioning going on and there's already a national collegiate championship. So you could make both of those arguments, and I think we'll see a plan from, Brian and that team in the next 6 months, if I had to guess.
What's on the PDGA's docket right now as we head into the holiday season, when I'm sure things slow down a little bit, and start looking ahead to 2022?
Yes, we just had our fall summit in Augusta that I hosted with our staff and board. We have 3 new board members plus Jeff, who's only been a board member since I think March, and so we went over a lot of staffing things there and department head reports, and setting the stage to kind of have a strategy review in the spring and maybe an open summit session as well. But over the next few months, we will be working on approving the budget, which is a very time-consuming process. we will be reviewing and accepting major bids for 2023. And so those are the two biggest projects that the board will be engaged with over the next few months.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Nate, for stopping by. We appreciate your time and looking forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you, guys. And I'm glad that my chair is blocking a prototype Ledgestone player pack item for next year. I just realized that I'm very glad that it's, and maybe this isn't even viewed by people in terms of it. Maybe it's just audio only, but if it is video, then I'm glad that I'm blocking this prototype. So
everyone's got to go to YouTube and see if they can, zoom and enhance and figure out what's going on back there.
They can't, because even that plastic bag behind me is just is something on a couch. So
okay.
There's nothing to be seen. But I'm glad that I'm blocking it. So.
All right, Nate Heinold, PDGA board Prez, and you're running D-Glow and Ledgestone again this year,
and Combined Worlds.
And Combined Worlds. Wow. All right. Well.
So Ledgestone
Get after it.
Ledgestone is hiring, so
so's everybody.
Yeah.
Good luck. All right, Nate Heinold, thank you. Welcome back to the Upshot. Thanks again for Nate for coming on. And look, I spent years on this podcast talking about wanting a fourth major, and we got it, and it's coming next year, and I'm excited about that. And ultimately, I think this format is for the best. It's when Paul McBeth leaves a major off of his 2022 schedule post on Instagram, it's like, okay, well, we got to do something, right? I think, everybody involved that I talked to yesterday said that the McBeth thing was not the reason that this happened. It wasn't the driving force, but things like that are the kinds of things that make sponsors go, yikes. And I think you're much more likely to get everything off on, going in the right direction with this major eventually feeling like an important one if you stick to a standard major script.
And I think he's completely right in a lot of ways about, the kind of pomp and circumstance that they're going to put around it in terms of the cup that's going to sit at the IDGC and holding a WR Jackson to start and having it be a one course. I mean, there are things that they've already started to consider about building in the long-term future of what this tournament's going to look like. And imagine a world where even the first year goes well and we kind of like the format, but then after 3 or 4 years, we come back and we're like, this really isn't a major. That's 4 years of champions whose names are now on this cup that are like he says, have an asterisk a little bit. And it's weird. And so you risk stifling what I think has a lot of potential for momentum, because you've been calling for a fourth major forever. I think the timing of it is perfect in terms of putting it in the spring. And so I think it's the right decision for the longevity of this tournament and for establishing it as a legitimate major to drop that match play section of the format.
Yeah, bring me, Stableford, bring this weird hybrid format to other events. I'm like all for that kind of stuff. I think it's fun. I think you try out different stuff, you see what works, you see what doesn't. But when you're talking about major championships, there's a reason that you have a lot of consistency when you look across the sports that are individual major driven sports like golf and tennis. You're going to see mostly the same standard format for those things. And, we're not going to beat the horse. We've already talked about this, ad nauseum. So I think ultimately, no matter what you do, no matter how you try to set it up and goose it up, it's not going to feel like the most important of the majors. It's just a simple fact. And that's okay. What can you do? You have to start somewhere to establish a fourth major. The only other option really, I think, is to put an M next to an existing tournament's name, as Nate suggested. But the obvious one is the Pro Tour Championship. And the Pro Tour Championship is a week after USDGC. So what are we going to have two majors back to back right next to each other? It's a hard thing to get right We talked about USDGC should move to the spring. That would solve a lot of problems, right? But it's not happening. So, for now, this is what it is. And I think I'm excited to tune in and watch the W.R. Jackson course. And, at the end of the day, somebody's going to get the major championship status next to their name. And that's going to be a motivating factor for players, period. And if they, back it up as they should with very large purse and the pomp and circumstance that it needs with media coverage, then I think that you will have it be a successful event.
So I didn't realize when Nate said that, when talking about, this being a legitimate major and the difficulty of winning it, and he talked about there being 2 match play rounds on the same day at WR Jackson, I didn't realize they were going to try and make him play 2 rounds on WR Jackson the same day. I remember back in February or March, whenever this tournament was announced, they were asking on Jomez, they were doing like their podcast version of Jomez in the off season, and they asked, German, Sexton, and Ulibarri what they thought. And Sexton's like, what course is it on? And they're like, WR Jackson. And Sexton's like, hate it. Don't like it. That course is too hard. So I don't know if he even knew at that point that he was going to have to play 2 rounds in the same day on that course. That sounds excruciating.
I mean, the only thing about match play is that, if you get a lead, it can be over in 10, 11 holes. But you can't count on that happening, especially with the player quality that you're going to have at that point, right? You're going to have 4 players who have proven to really be comfortable and playing really well on that course. The idea that somebody's going to get a huge lead and it's not going to go 17, 18 holes seems like the wrong thing to assume. So, yeah, look, I mean, it's just for the best. It's for the best. And the PDGA ultimately listened to what they were hearing and they made a change. And I think you got to respect that. And this is the kind of thing that if you get frustrated with the PDGA for not listening enough, this is them listening, right? Think about the decision making that we've seen from the organization this year. So they had some early struggles, right? We think back to what was going on at U.S. Women's and a lot of complaints about the professionalism, and then we have Worlds and all of the issues at Worlds, and the PDGA was incredibly defensive initially, incredibly defensive. And I think there was some soul searching after that event and a realization that this is not sustainable. We are having huge PR problems with not just with fans, but with players, and players talking about potentially boycotting and players actively not going to national tour events. That is not what you want as the PDGA. It's important for the players to back your organization. I mean, they're influential, they're literally influencers. And since that point, we have seen a lot of what I would call very fan-friendly kind of player-first type decisions, from passing things, passing the NT off to the Pro Tour and saying, hey, Pro Tour, run the media too. This decision, right? Just the choices to hire up more staff to focus on supporting tournament directors. They're doing the right stuff. Mm-hmm. Don't focus on the little nitty gritty, somebody didn't answer my email or, the things. Look, no organization is perfect, but these are big strategic choices that are going in the right direction for what the PDGA needs to be focusing on. I mean, they told us they hire Brian Graham to do international and youth and college, right? That is a huge deal. Those are areas where the PDGA really needs to put resources, and they're hiring a former executive director of the organization to focus on those details. I think that this is important stuff, and I'm glad to see it.
If you kind of wipe the slate of Worlds and prior for this year, this would be considered, and still should be considered, one of the most important years in terms of how the PDGA has shaped disc golf moving forward. I mean, we would be talking about the PDGA in very different terms without those blunders at the beginning. But I would say, I think those were a catalyst to the kind of momentum and monumental changes that have happened. So I don't know if you can necessarily separate them. But when you consider, I mean, this is an amazing second half of the season for the PDGA. Little rough at the beginning, but I feel like since July, they have done some incredible work in making changes and addressing the needs of what the community needs. And I'm excited for next year. I really think that they've set us up well for next year and for the coming years. And I think they're on the right path at this point.
103,000+ members. And look, let me see if I can pull it up. Like last year's number was like 70,000, I think, maybe less than that. Let me look at where things were from 1 year ago. Like what's the growth since last September? And you remember a lot of people started playing disc golf, and we had this huge growth by last September. Last September, at the beginning, on September 1st, there were 56,000 members. This year, 96,000 members. So that's 71% growth from September 2020 to September 2021. And of course, we know that now they're over 100,000 for the first time in the history of the organization. So it's just fantastic to see. Women memberships are up over 100%. They've doubled. More than doubled. This is just incredible, right? Like big picture, things are going really well. And I think the PDGA is making the right strategic decisions to be ready for the future. So exciting to see. And I hope this new major is good. I mean, I don't know what else you can do besides put it on a great course, make sure you put a lot of money into it, and hopefully players show up. Because we are nearing the point, and we've talked about this, where like major status may not be just determined by what the PDGA says. You could start to see it get more driven by what players and fans think. So this is kind of an important first year. Let's turn our attention to Gavin Rathbun signing a 1-year deal with Dynamic Discs. So Dynamic, of course, losing Eric Oakley a week ago, and a lot of people wondering where they were headed. Well, they just signed one of the more exciting young players on tour. Don't forget, he's hardly been on tour that long. Like he went full-time tour in 2020. He won the 2016 AM Worlds, USAM. I always get these mixed up. Yeah, USM.
Yeah,
USM was the
USM.
champion in 2016. And obviously had a great year, 3 top 10 finishes, including a podium finish at the Des Moines Challenge. He is currently in rehab for a torn labrum in his shoulder. He got surgery a couple of weeks ago and is doing all of the physical therapy to get back to right. My understanding, and Josh, maybe you know the answer to this even more than I do, 3 to 4 months typically for a labrum recovery. Which puts him back, I would be surprised. I think maybe he's even said he's not going to play Las Vegas. That would be like right around that 3-month mark. If he waits, then I think a little bit better chance to come out strong. But certainly he should be playing by early in the season. And so DD gets another top MPO name. He's slightly lower rated than Chris Clemens, but I think very clearly had the more impressive overall season and becomes an immediate face for the organization.
I'm interested to see. I think this is a big year for Gavin, and I saw some talk about just on the comments. They're like, "Well, why didn't Gavin sign a longer deal?" And I think it's DD's choice, if I had to guess. DD wants the 1-year trial, see how he comes back from the shoulder injury. But if Gavin performs well this year, wins an Elite Series event, and has good overall finishes, makes the Pro Tour Championship, makes the Match Play Championship, both of which I feel like, had he not hurt his shoulder, would have been pretty likely. Excuse me. And so, assuming he has another really good year, I think Gavin has a chance to lock himself into a really good contract. what I'm interested to see is, does DD roll out a kind of lineup of discs around a star player, whether that be Gavin or somebody else? Because that's what we've been seeing lately as the standard from manufacturers. MVP with James Conrad's discs, Discraft with Macbeth's. So I'm interested to see what this deal looks like both this year and in the long term for Gavin.
Well, I was talking to Eric McCabe, who's the tour manager for DD. And he said that he thinks that the era of like longer term multi-year contracts for younger up and coming players is basically already over. That because of how fast disc golf is growing, younger players want to, bet on themselves and you think about it, right? Same thing we said when, Drew Gibson signs this like lifetime deal with Infinite Disc. It's like, hopefully you have a chance to renegotiate those terms, because like, what if things change dramatically in the next 5 years, which feels like a possibility. I mean, you cannot discount the possibility that disc golf just continues to rip higher. Even as we talked about last week, it feels like things have really cooled off and we're coming off the peak. I mean, maybe that's just because it's winter. Like, it's possible that spring comes around and boom, we're right back at it, and things are booming again, and it just goes up and up and up. At which point, you don't want to be locked into a long-term contract that doesn't have upside for you when all of a sudden monthly stipend amounts are, instead of, I don't know, $3,000 or $4,000, now they're $8,000 to $10,000, right? Like, companies are like throwing big money around, because in a way, it's like a salary cap situation a little bit, right? Companies have some amount of budget that they're probably willing to spend on their overall player marketing side. And if their company doubles in size, you would imagine that the budget that they have for marketing is going to go up approximately double as well. And you don't want to be caught in a situation where you're on a longer term deal and you're getting a bad deal. And so I think that, unless you're a huge name and you have really clear advantages on the upside with straight up sales incentives that just continue to accumulate to you no matter how many discs are sold, you're going to see players wanting to like do a 1 year, do a 1-and-1. I'm surprised we haven't seen more options started to get built into these deals, because that would make a lot of sense, right? If a player has an option to pick up their contract again, a really good player is going to be able to demand something like that. LeBron James type contract. There's no reason that a top 5 type player can't just go in and say, hey, I want to sign a multi-year deal, but I want 2 with an option on the 3rd year to pick up and stay with my current contract, because maybe they have a bad season and they want to just take that money. And if not, they tear it up and they sign a new contract. And I think that that's going to be, that's the next step. But, big picture, I think this gives Gavin some, financial security. This is like a pretty standard contract, it sounds like. Monthly stipend, bonuses for performance, Tour Series disc, and, they're going to do a lot of media, which of course is a big dynamic discs thing. So, it's pretty nice to be able to sign a new, better contract in an off season where you have just undergone surgery, right? Like, there's some risk on DD's side, but I think it's risk that they needed to take. Maybe they wouldn't do this if they already had a really well-established MPO team, but they don't. And so they're going to take their chances. And it's not like a torn labrum is a career-ending injury. But, if this was baseball, like, maybe that player doesn't get a big contract. It's like a time when you're probably going to have to take less. So interested to see how it all goes.
I'm also interested, and maybe these exist and we just don't know about them, but I'm curious what buyout the options look like, right? Do these contracts come, the multi-years at least, come with a, here's the penalty or your option to buy out? Could other companies start purchasing these contracts from companies to get them out early, right? I'm interested to see the nuances then of these contract negotiations. And I think that as we get agents, as we get more infrastructure around these negotiations, that's going to be the case, because those things only benefit
soccer
players.
Transfer fees for
man,
for players moving from company to company. I mean, anything is possible, right? I think historically, mostly what you've seen is that players who want to end a contract early just come talk to their manufacturer, say, I'm not happy, I want out. And often those players are able to get out. Now, not always, because remember back when Paige was on Prodigy, she was miserable her last year with Prodigy, and I think maybe wanted to get out, and Prodigy said, you're under contract. But then Paige was with DD and left early, but they didn't have a written contract. So think about that. We're not so far from the point where handshake deals were common. Now this stuff's all in writing. There's lawyers. Like, there's too much money involved. And, look, all contracts are going to include if there's a breach, we can split up, and there's these series of steps that you have to go through. I think generally if parties are unhappy, in this case, it's like, why would it's like if you're a manufacturer and you have a player on your team that's really unhappy and does not want to be under contract with you, there's not a really good incentive to try to keep them around in most cases. Like, are they really making that much of a difference to your bottom line that you want to force them to stick around and have the bad PR that creates, or maybe have the player sort of like actively undermining you or playing really badly because they're upset, and that then you're just paying them money to be there, but there's bad blood. I don't think that's usually worth it. So I think in most cases, if a player goes to a company and says, I'm really unhappy, I want out, that they're going to find a way to split up. And I doubt that there's the players like forking back over $100,000 or something. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either. I think what it may include, though, because as contracts, and I think with the current contracts, I think you're right. But imagine if Macbeth went to Discraft and is like, I'm out. I mean, they've put so much money into his brand and his discs and his face in Discraft that would be devastating.
All right. That's a situation where they might say, no, you're not. You're under contract.
We've got the ink.
But I think that's a rare player.
I agree. I completely agree that it's a rare player. I think that as contracts become, for top players, more along Macbeth lines, I think that's going to be more the norm, or not the norm, but a reality that we're going to start seeing of what happens when you get a top player who signs a 5-year deal and 2 years in. I mean, Kristen Tatar at Latitude 64. Imagine if 2 years into that deal, she's like, you know what? I want out. I imagine there's going to be some legal wrestling to get out of contracts like that.
Could we see that? Like a big, they go to small claims court over a contract. I mean, it's possible.
Judge Judy.
It's possible. I mean, as the sport professionalizes and somebody's in a bad situation with a crappy contract that doesn't reflect the value that they're bringing to their company, like, you're going to see somebody maybe want to try to raise it all the way up to taking it to court. Judge Judy would actually be hilarious and amazing.
What
I think it's actually too
television?
big of a, there's too, I don't know what the rule is for Judge Judy, but it feels like they're normally talking about $2,000, I sold my car to this person, but it would be hilarious to have, some disc golfer and then the manufacturer with all their lawyers, it's just the disc golfer. I mean, it's great television. It would be great television.
It would. but there's the reality show we were talking about.
So, is Dynamic Discs, is this a start of a new chapter for them? Eric McCabe told me yesterday that they put huge contracts in front of Eagle and Calvin last offseason, and both of them ended up going back to their current manufacturers, Discmania and Innova, respectively. So they've been going for a big name pro. I don't really know who's on the market right now that would be at that level, but supposedly they've got more in the works.
There was a comment. If you go to the Ultiworld's Facebook page and you go under this article, someone has a screenshot of a comment on the Dynamic Disc YouTube page from Dynamic Disc saying, "This will not be our biggest splash signing." So I'm interested. And that's kind of why, that's what prompted my conversation about breaking contract, is because I'm not aware of who the biggest free agents are, really.
Matt Oram?
Okay. I think he'd be a big name.
I think that'd be a good get. I think that'd be a good get. I mean, he's a little bit of a niche guy, but I feel like with the right marketing around him, Matt Oram could be an enormous fan favorite that sold a lot of discs. I'm trying to think, like, if you're talking about bigger, right, you need somebody who's 1030 plus.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, let's go look at the player stats right now.
Okay.
There's not that many players above 1030.
Mattio's a good.
So,
it's a good pick.
Okay. Ricky, Eagle, Paul, all under contract. Heimberg, under contract until the end of next year. Chris Dickerson, under contract. Matt Oram, 1045. That's a person who's played one event. That does not count. Adam Hammis. I don't know. I want to say he's still under contract, but I don't know that for a fact. That's an interesting one. He signed a 2-year extension.
In 2021, Adam Hammis signs 1-year Discraft extension.
Yeah.
This is from January. So Adam Hammis is up for grabs.
Potentially. I would be surprised if he left Discraft, but that doesn't seem out of the question. Kyle Klein is under contract. Kevin Jones is under contract. I've been hearing whispers that Kevin Jones re-upped with Prodigy. I think he was already under contract, but I think maybe they tore it up and signed a new one. So we'll see about that. Drew Gibson, that's already done. James Conrad's under contract. Nate Sexton's never leaving Innova. Mason Ford. I don't think that would count as bigger than Gavin Rathbun, if you ask me. Then you start to just get down into names where it's like, I don't really know that would be that big of a difference maker. Garrett Gerthy, I don't know off the top of my head what his contract situation is. He got a 3-year extension through 2023, so he's got 2 more years, and I would be surprised to see him leave anyway. Then you've got, Nico is already on West Side. Joel Freeman. Again,
that doesn't feel like the splash
thing. I mean, Matt Oram is clearly the biggest free agent left on the board unless somebody breaks their contract.
Yep.
So there you go.
I love the thought of Matt Oram getting a big fat contract.
He's been.
with DD.
Reports are that he's like brutally underpaid right now, and like one of the reasons that he's not full-time touring is that his Prodigy contract just like isn't very good. And who knows when he signed it, and things have changed a lot in the last couple years, but the skill level is obvious. I mean, he's elite. If he played all of the tournaments, I think he wins an elite series most seasons. I think that's how good he is. So he's going to be a great get for somebody, and maybe he stays at Prodigy. It's possible. But Prodigy already has some big horses. They got some people they got to pay.
That's a top heavy. Yeah, that's a top heavy team.
They got to pay Dickerson and they got to pay Kevin Jones.
Not to mention Katrina
Allen. So, if you're going to let somebody walk, it would make sense that it would be Matt Oram. But I think he is a sneaky get for somebody. So we'll keep an eye on that. ESPN2. Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship aired on ESPN2 on Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, right smack dab in the middle of the NFL Sunday. Tough time slot this time around. I looked around. I went on Twitter. Last year, it was Thanksgiving week, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, basically nothing else on sports television. There was like a soccer game, and I mean, I suppose there was NBA, but like, Tuesday night NBA.
It's early season NBA. Yeah.
So, there was a ton of buzz, right? Oh, like, obviously, it was a really exciting moment for disc golfers to tune in and watch on ESPN2 for the first time. But there were also, just professional golfers tuning in and watching. Bubba Watson and Rory McIlroy are, talking about it on their social media. There were just tons of people who were watching this because, you figure people are home, prime time. No one's working very hard that week. So you're flipping channels and you're like, I don't really want to watch this MLS game. Oh, what's this? Disc golf. That did not happen this time. I think the sheen has worn off a little bit for disc golfers, who, of course, have already watched the coverage. And there was just there was very minimal buzz because if you're a sports fan, you're watching the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. It's the number one sport. It's number one television programming in America by far. Not just a Super Bowl, week in, week out. We're talking 18 to 25 million viewers on NFL games. I mean, these numbers are blowing away everything else. So it's tough to go up against that. People aren't even thinking about going to ESPN on NFL days, right? They're going to Fox, they're going to CBS and NBC for the night game. So, Josh, I had a chance to watch much of the program. I saw a screener version. Did you tune in?
I did not. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I forgot it was this last weekend. I kind of had it on my radar. I knew it was coming up, and then I got busy. And
I think you're not alone.
I
think you're not alone.
It wasn't as in my face this time.
No,
at all.
No.
And so it was way harder to remember about it.
I think that's just natural. You're not necessarily clamoring to sit down and watch. It doesn't feel like an event as much now that it's been on ESPN2 a few times. And that's just a natural evolution. And I think that's okay because the point of the whole thing is not to have disc golfers watch. It's to get new people to see it. So we'll see what the ratings were. Based on social media buzz, they're going to be significantly down from last year. The programming itself was beautifully shot. It was it was much more like a documentary than what we saw last year, which was more sort of traditional. Felt like watching a fancier version of YouTube programming. So this was more like beauty shots and narrator voice, deep voiceover, and interviews spliced in, and it would feel a little confusing. I think it's not like a natural I understand exactly what's going on and I'm watching sports. And I saw some comments online that really didn't like that nature of it. But as wow, look at what a beautiful sport this is, and presented as kind of more of a look into the feel of disc golf and some of the personalities of disc golf. I think it really achieved that. I think there's going to be people who feel really strongly one way or the other about whether they like it. But I don't know. It feels like with the time slot, it kind of got a little just overshadowed.
Two thoughts on that. The first of which is I agree that this isn't for disc golfers, but my concern is that these huge delays in between the actual tournament and this coverage, and the style that really isn't made for disc golfers at all. I mean, that narration, the documentary kind of style, that's not really what disc golfers are looking for. My worry is that less disc golfers are going to bring their friends to watch it. It's something that they're like, I'm not a huge fan. It wasn't as much buzz. We're like, oh yeah, people watch it on ESPN. That's right. I think it's got to be, you got to find a way to find the balance where it's designed for people who are not already in the sport, but that we can get excited about taking people and, going to B-dubs and being like, oh, I want ESPN2 on this TV, please. That's something that's a balance you got to strike. The second thing though, I wonder one, how much they're paying for this slot. And if traditional advertising would not be a better bang for your buck. Like, imagine if you got a advertisement for, I don't know, the Pro Tour Championship on Disc Golf Network on Sunday Night Football. Now, I'm sure those slots are incredibly expensive to buy. I don't know numbers. I don't know how much they're paying for ESPN2. But what are your thoughts, Charlie, about getting a traditional TV advertisement during a primetime Sunday slot for a tournament?
I think it's an interesting concept. For what it's worth, the deal here, I don't believe they are paying for like the airtime. They're paying for the production, of course, but a lot of which is happening in-house, but they do have outside help as well on the editing side. And then they get advertising trade. So ESPN gets, 60% of the advertising slots, and the Pro Tour gets 40% or something. And they're able to put Pro Tour sponsor ads, as we saw last year, into the broadcast, basically. So it's a barter, right? So ESPN is getting content that fills their linear 24 hours essentially for free, and they get to put ads next to it. And then the Pro Tour obviously gets the benefit of being on cable television and then being able to serve ads as well. So I think financially, this is not like some sort of waste of money, especially when you're thinking big picture about the value of having more exposure. Now, to your question about whether or not it makes sense to buy an ad on ESPN, it's expensive, I think. Like this is in ways a giant advertisement that they don't have to pay for, and in fact may end up actually being like, revenue positive for them because they're able to serve ads for their partners on the Pro Tour. So I don't think it's out of the question. I'd rather see them like throw up billboards around the Pro Tour Championship. Let's say it's in Charlotte again next year. They buy some billboard space and say, Pro Disc Golf Championship starting Thursday, go to DGPT.com for tickets. Like, there's probably people in Charlotte who love disc golf and don't know anything, because it's like the number one city in the country for disc golf, and don't know anything about the Pro Tour. There's still a lot of people out there that do not know about professional disc golf that love to play disc golf. Or maybe they sort of vaguely know. But maybe those people would be like, oh, I'll go check that out. I'll pay $25 and go check this out. That sounds like a fun thing to do on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. That to me could make a lot of sense. More local advertising.
Yeah.
So that is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our subscriber bonus segment, we're going to be talking about the current state of manufacturers' teams, who's looking good, who won the Manufacturers Cup, where maybe we might see teams trying to invest based on weak spots, and what's coming up in what is a relatively calm offseason because of so many multi-year deals that were signed last year. I wonder if some of those players are wishing that they hadn't done that. Wouldn't be surprised. So join us for that, discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe, and we'll be back with you here on the main show on Thursday. Now, before we go, please send in what you are thankful for. We would love to hear from you, upshot@ultiworld.com. And rather than just send in a text email, pull out your phone, go to the voice memos app or whatever it is called on Android. Sorry, I don't know. And record yourself maybe 15 to 30 seconds. Let us know what you're thankful for, whether that be disc golf specific or just something else in your life. We're going to compile all of these into our Thanksgiving episode next week on Thursday. And so we'd love to hear from you. Just takes 2 seconds, record it into your phone, and then just hit the little share button, send it to upshot@ultiworld.com, and we'll take care of the rest. So we always look forward to hearing about what you're thankful for, and we'll, of course, record our own. So, upshot@ultiworld.com. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we will talk to you on Thursday right here on The Upshot.